The capital of the Galactic Government Council was a planet chosen especially for the purpose. It was what humans might call a Gaia-class world. The gravity was heavier than anyone on the Council liked, but that had been part of the point when they founded the Council here. They had fitted massive gravity generators across the planet, within deep craters that dot the continents marked for perfectly contained bowl cities. Each of the major Council species had a crater dedicated to their own environment and tailored to their tastes. The less powerful species would share various craters with similar species. The largest of these craters housed the Council itself in the Capitol building. It was a massive spire, stretching high enough to look over the edge of the crater and at the lush green terrain beyond. Despite having settled centuries ago, no species expanded past the craters. It was easier to control the gravity within the craters, and it was part of their statement about the planet itself. Leave most of it intact, and just use portions of it to tailor to the needs of each race. Of course, some joke that this visual paradise hid a bureaucratic hellhole. Since there were so many different species that were members of the Council. But it was tailored around the founding members. There were some species who couldn't stay awake for the Council meetings, and many who weren't comfortable in the settings. This was how the galactic government generally worked. They preached cooperation and unity, but at the same time, only catered to the tastes of the most powerful species. Each of those craters are being fought for on a paperwork war. Meetings after meetings, constant committees about every last little detail. The solar cycle of the planet itself was irrelevant. There were meetings and ceremonies and appointments at all times. To help combat their own time cycles, most species would hire specially trained diplomats from species who would better endure the time changes and varied climates. There was never-ending paperwork, assigned studies, and training going on to try and keep a species in the proper standing with the founding species. The Porvians, with their love of rules and paperwork, made sure to keep it all as complicated and painful as possible. Then the Gerweldians, a species some humans might call space hamsters, were left to run many of the various offices and file paperwork. It wasn't that they were good at it. In fact, they were known for being nervous and prone to losing the files that had been submitted. Another layer that had been added, to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to get anything done. There were special Porvian branches, who were allowed to bypass the Gerweldian departments, to make sure the Council species had their paperwork all in order. One of the reasons the Gerweldians were always so nervous was because they hadn't been alone on their home planet. There had been another species that was much stronger, and meaner, but less intelligent. The official story was the Crustacans had saved the Gerweldians from being killed by this other species, and in exchange the Gerweldians were ever in their debt. In reality, the other species had been brutish, but more in a harmless idiot sort of way, never taking out their anger on the smaller Gerweldians. But the Crustacans had no use for them, and plenty of uses for a seemingly harmless slave race. They had been intent on achieving this goal when they'd been discovered by other species. They quickly changed their story, and they terrified the Gerweldians into keeping up the charade. By this point, almost none of the Gerweldians even knew the truth, but a very small group kept the true history alive, waiting for the right moment to make it known. The Gerweldian ambassador was one of those, but he knew that now was not the time. He was in a special chamber, deep beneath the main council building. It was where the council founders met for security meetings. He usually wasn't invited, but today he'd been dragged along to give the appearance of unity among the founders. He was seated on a plush, powerful-looking chair, on a platform with the other founders overlooking a mass of ambassadors from member species who'd been dragged out of bed or out of meetings to be here. Crustacan honor guard surrounding them. We want to make this clear. We expect a unanimous vote condemning the actions of these Libertonian and human terrorists, and a declaration of war against them. That was the Crustacan matriarch, Alet. She was older, and larger than other Crustacan matriarchs. She had been part of the force that wiped out the Geweldians' old neighbouring species all those centuries ago. He didn't even know why they needed the Honor Guard to intimidate the others. She could kill everything in this room on her own, eat it, and still be hungry. But we saw Crustacan ships advancing into human space before the attack on your colony. That was the Kitchen Ambassador. A third species of light omnivores near human space. They were new and didn't truly understand how the galactic government worked yet. The suppression devices hadn't been tailored for them yet, which was likely why she even dared speak back. We were moving forward because our intelligence made it clear they were hostile. It has been explained to you pathetic wretches before. This galaxy is a democracy, and as a democracy I demand a unanimous vote to show solidarity. She had reared up and stomped on the ground, shaking the chamber under her girth. There was fear on the faces of the ambassadors, and Puddle the Geweldian ambassador looked along the platform at the other species. The Porvians and their smug superiority, the Greslins and their damn codes, the Philas and their stupid dancing, and of course the Crustacans. They had spoken to the greed of the other founders so long ago, stirring up hatred and jealousy towards the Libertonians who could fly, and were too tall and graceful and intelligent. Puddle cursed the ambassador from that age. They should have stood by the Libertonians. It would have been better to be wiped out as they fought than be slaves in all but name for centuries. These humans were his chance to have his revenge for all the wrongdoings done against his people. He just had to bide his time. Then he realized the other founders were looking at him. Yes, of course. This is just like the time our saviors, the Crustacans, were able to liberate our smart old predators. We need to respect their judgment and abide by their call. Once he said that, he could feel the sweat on his brow under his fur. But the other founders nodded and added their agreement. He quickly dabbed a cloth along his forehead and gulped. Damn his nerves. He watched the Crustacan matriarch intimidate the other ambassadors for a moment. Soon, he'd find some way to get his revenge on that horrible creature. All the crimes committed against his people would be paid back in full. He'd be the one laughing at them. No more Puddle this and Puddle that. If only his people were good at something other than farming. They were terrible with paperwork, couldn't fight, and their engineers only made farming equipment. He paused then, as he looked out and saw all the ambassadors looking at him. Nervously, he looked to the side to see the other founders staring at him, and the matriarch scowling as she shouted, "Puddle!" He squealed and jumped, falling out of his chair and rolling around as he tried to get back on his feet. Useless little... The matriarch scowled, even as the other founders laughed at the Geweldian, desperately trying to grab the edge of his chair and pull himself back up. "No, please, Puddle, take your time," she hissed with annoyance. "Stupid little rodent." Sorry, matriarch. I was thinking about food again. My error," he huffed, trying to get his breath back. "You fat little... Keep your mind on the matter at Claw. You never do anything right," she hissed. He had finally righted himself back up and sat in his chair. "Never mind, Puddle. I'll make it clear myself." The matriarch looked back out to the other ambassadors as Puddle clutched his chest, feeling his heart thudding like mad. "Beside condemning the humans and declaring war, I want a special directive naming a new most wanted enemy of the entire galactic government." She scowled out at the assembled ambassadors. "There is no greater threat, no bigger enemy of all of us, than the human known as Billy Bob Space Trucker." "I swear to George Washington Almighty, if any of you talk about my workout music ever again, I'll have you brought up on charges," Captain Crunch growled over the comm. "Sorry, it was too good not to share, especially when I found out that you like to move it, Billy Bob said, as the Archangels chuckled, as the other Archangels echoed, "Move it." "Not a word. I have worked very hard to be taken seriously as an officer. Being born with the last name Crunch isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world, you know. So why not change it? I refuse to let society force me to change. Suit yourself, Captain, Billy Bob said, as he walked forward. He'd gotten the hang of the suit now, and they were walking along one of the roads leading to the cargo port. Most of the time they moved cargo around the surface on massive mag trains, but they still had roads for private vehicles. They'd walked down onto one of these roads, while Ivanovich piloted the Longhorn. The ship was set to hover, and crept along nice and slow. Emily was in the back, ready to climb into the damaged but functional Libertonian power suit, should they need the help. Crunch was in the cargo bay, out of sight as she spoke on the comm. They were taking a very leisurely stroll along the road, their black power suits arranged around the Longhorn in a loose rectangle. Billy Bob up on the front left. Emily, do Greslins wave? Yes. Would a Polvian understand? Yes. He waved at the guard standing in the gatehouse as they walked closer, keeping a calm and casual pace. When they got closer, the guard in a bright orange vest and a little cap stepped out. Billy Bob couldn't help but snigger a little at the sight, since he had his clothes cut so that the curly fur popped out in various locations. Totally space poodles. What's all this? We're here on special assignment to search for the escaped terrorists who shot up the museum. We've been searching the wilderness for signs of them. Our government is taking this very seriously, which is why we're wearing brand new, top-of-the-line suits. Not the standard ones you see on regular police. Oh, the poodle said with a slow nod. Hey, no one called ahead of us, did they? No, not that I know of. Oh, that's good. I was worried. Why's that? Well... Billy Bob lowered his speaker volume and leaned in close. They've had us out in the forest for 2 whole solar cycles, just the 5 of us, and it's really creepy out there with just 5 people. All the trees and the strange sounds at night, and we have to take turns standing guard while the others sleep, so sometimes we're all alone in the dark. The Porvian shuddered at the thought, as Billy Bob knew the idea would. That's awful. 2 whole solar cycles? Yeah, think about how many sleep cycles that is. That's the problem. They take this so seriously, they won't let us come back right away. You know how it is. Your boss has some issue and he gets to stay home and rest like normal, but he makes you take extra work shifts even though none of it is your fault, right? Yeah, that's rough, the Porvian said with a nod. We were hoping you'd let us in and keep it quiet. We'd find a spot to stop and take a break. Maybe spend a sleep cycle here in the wars and get some actual rest. I know it isn't usual, but can you help us out? I'd really appreciate it. Hey, yeah, I know how it goes. That's fine. Shipments have been slow since all this went down anyway. Hey, thanks. I'll note your help, see if we can return the favor sometime. The Porvian wagged his tail and walked back into the guardhouse, opening the gate for them. You know, you're not like the other fish cops I know. You're normally so stiff and by the code. Oh, well, normally, but once you've been out in the forest at night, all alone, changes you. Billy Bob watched the Porvian shudder once more, and then waved them inside. Billy Bob smiled inside his suit as they walked forward, entering the cargo port. There were admin buildings near the centre, and giant warehouses around the outside, with docking bays for the massive Atlas ships in between. He wasn't sure how big it was, but he couldn't see the other side from where they were. That was excellent, Billy Bob, Crunch said, having listened in. Now what? Billy Bob hummed as he looked around, and then started walking to the left. This way. He could see an Atlas that had a crew standing around the loading bay, sitting on crates, smoking something. A clear sign that they were done unloading and were waiting on something to show up. Didn't matter what species, Billy Bob knew what to look for in cargo crews. They had to walk another 10 minutes, even at a brisk pace, to get there, and it was one of the closer bays, so Billy Bob realised this place must be really huge. Either way, he stood up straighter than normal and set into a confident stride as he approached the Xenos, sitting around on the crates. He'd seen plenty of them around before, called them lickers. They had 4 arms and a more reptilian appearance, sort of like a really big iguana with extra limbs. They were about as tall as a human, but much lighter, obviously. The main reason he called them lickers was their super long tongue. They couldn't blink, so instead they licked their own eyes to moisten them. "Alright, you don't need to clear out of here, we're coming through," he barked out, as he got close and they jumped off their crates, looking at the approaching black power suits. Many of them nervously lit their eyeballs while they stubbed out the smoking sticks they'd been breathing in. And they weren't cigarettes, he realised as he got close. They literally looked like branches that had been partially set on fire. "What?" one asked, as Billy Bob turned and stepped up to him abruptly, towering over him. "You heard me. Clear out. You got the notice half a cycle ago. I don't know why you're still here." What?" The licker looked confused, and licked his eyes even more than usual in nervousness. "How many times do I need to say it? Clear out! This ship is being commandeered in the name of the Galactic Council. You're interfering with Council business here." He set his hands on his hips. "How bad do you want to go straight to space jail, huh? I hear there are plenty of interesting cellmates willing to explore interspecies physical relations." No. There hasn't been... I didn't know." "Well, you're in the way of official business, like I said, so clear out of here." The licker scurried away as they guided the Longhorn up the cargo ramp. The Atlas ships were so massive, the Longhorn fit into the center of their cargo bay, and had room for another 7 of them, were they stacked properly. And that was just the cargo bay. Took a lot of fuel to move them around, and they had big crews. Part of the reason human freight had been so popular was their lower costs and ability to deliver smaller loads. As they set the Longhorn down in the bay, he saw the better-dressed command crew walking down the stairs at the front of the cargo bay. "What is the meaning of this?" the best-dressed licker asked as he approached. "I should ask you that," Billy Bob said, and pointed at the creature. He stepped back in surprise. "We gave you notice a half cycle ago, and I found your crew outside smoking. They hadn't prepped the ship or removed their personal effects. Are you intending on obstructing our operations?" "What? What are we... His tongue was rubbing all over his eyeballs in anxiety. "I could have you written up right now. Do you want this short-term appropriation to turn into a total impound?" I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, playing dumb, are you? We sent your comm officer a report half a cycle ago about commandeering this ship for a small jump around the planet and bringing it back before the solar cycle is over. It was time critical and we were willing to compensate you. But turns out this is how you prep." The captain looked over to another licker, who looked panicked and confused. He wiggled his eyes and made a gesture with his 4-fingered hands. Billy Bob's translator told him that was a shrug. "We didn't get anything like that," he sputtered. "We have a confirmation from an Officer Jazz." One stepped forward. "I'm Officer Jazz." Billy Bob could not believe his luck. "Is your first name Hugh? Are you a Hugh Jazz?" They stared at him as their translators struggled to differentiate his words. "What?" "Don't give me that. It's a simple question." He pointed at the licker. "Are you a Hugh Jazz? Tell me right now where I can find a Hugh Jazz." The translator. "Obstructing government operations, are you?" No, I'm a Jazz, but not a Hugh Jazz." "Fine. Clear out of here, all of you. Your belongings will be returned when we're done with your ship. Off." He began to wave them out of the cargo bay, stomping behind them as they scurried away and out of the ship. The Archangels were laughing over the private comm, but none had their speakers on, thankfully. Billy Bob corralled the lickers off the ship, and as they stood around looking confused, the captain spoke up. "What's going to happen?" "We're going to take your ship for a solar cycle, and you'll get it back when we're done." "But what do we do until then?" "First of all, what's your launch clearance?" We left the data slate on the bridge." "Excellent. Alright now then." Billy Bob pointed at the biggest admin building at the center of the complex, You need to go find Amanda in accounting. Amanda who? Amanda Hugginkiss. You go in there and you demand Amanda Hugginkiss. You shout it if you need to. You do not leave until you finally find Amanda Hugginkiss. Then she'll give you a receipt. But now, clear out. We're taking off. Billy Bob walked back inside, waving to Sergeant White, who hit the button to start closing the cargo ramp. Once it was closed and they were left alone in the massive cargo bay, Billy Bob held his hands out. Who's good? Who is good? Touchdown dance! Woo! He began to dance as the Archangels laughed and applauded his performance. All right. Get out of my damn suit and get this pig in the air, Crunch finally said. Come on, don't be a grump. This way no one had to die. We're out of here free and clear. Live it up, Captain. We're not out of here yet, Lieutenant, she growled. All right. Billy Bob opened the hatch at the back of the suit. Little help here? He tried to pull up and out of it, but he was still injured, so he was groaning and struggling but couldn't pull himself out. Cal stepped over, reaching in to help pull him out, much more gentle with her power suit than he was. He was held in her arms for a moment as he looked up at her. Are you my mummy? And she snorted before dropping him to the deck. He got his feet under him, but hit a little hard, as he had to stumble forward and then slowly straighten up, managing to keep from falling flat on his face. Cat-like reflexes. Do I not cease to amaze? We're all impressed with your ability to spew bullshit out of your mouth, Billy Bob, Cal said, as he had a shit-eating grin plastered on his face. Crunch had come out of the Longhorn to get back into her suit, while he headed deeper into the ship. Climbing up the small Xeno stairs 2 at a time, he still had to traverse several halls and corridors before making it into the bridge. He tapped into the ship's internal comm system as he began to look over the systems. The engines were cold, but he wasn't sure how long it would take the Lickers to realize they'd been hijacked. Ivan, get into engineering. Get the engines warmed up. I'm going to get the other systems online. We need to kick the tires and light the fires and get out of here pronto. He found the command chair, shaking his head at how lazy they were about these systems. Navigation, steering, speed, communications, they were all handled by different people. One human could easily handle steering and speed, and likely navigation on their own. Hell, adding in communication wasn't that hard either. He had to drag a number of monitors over to the command chair, slaving them to its control, as he sat down and started to type. Life support was obviously online, but he adjusted the atmosphere to be more human-friendly. Then he stopped as he thought of Emily and set it to standard. Ivan had the engine startup sequence going, and he quickly brought the other systems online. Testing nav boosters, grav generators, and the inertia dampeners one by one to make sure they were fully functional. He kept them all running on his Longhorn, since fully shutting it down was more trouble than it was worth, since he could get unloaded and going in less than an hour. The engines were just starting to spin up when he got the call from the tower. He quickly picked up the data slate and turned the video feed off. This is the tower. We've got indications of engine spin-up from your platform. We don't have you scheduled for takeoff for another half solar cycle. Yes, tower, this is... He looked at the data slate. Atlas 894376-221. No name? Did Xenos not name their ships? Well, shit, did Jazz not call you up? We've had a change of plans. We're no longer waiting on cargo. We're prepping for immediate takeoff. Atlas 221, with the recent trouble, you are aware of the enhanced security protocols. Yeah, Tower. I have my launch code right here. Foxtrot Echo Zulu 361. Understood, Atlas. However, that was a launch code for tonight. Not right now. We're supposed to have security sweep your ship before a new code can be given. Oh, is that necessary? They swept us to give us this one, and that was earlier. Do you really think some dangerous terrorists have snuck into this port and taken over our ship without any explosions or fighting? There was a pause as Billy Bob held his breath. Yeah, that's pretty unlikely. They're supposed to be real savage barbarians. I heard they fornicate in pools of blood. Ugh, that's disgusting. Right? Yeah, you're okay to go, Atlas 221. No one is launching, I'll clear you as central. Appreciate it, Tower. He let out a breath and smiled once more as he got the ship operational. Then he brought up the internal PA. Someone come up here, I'm going to need you to tell me where I'm going. It took a few minutes, but he was joined by Crunch on the bridge. We can't contact our cruiser until we're past orbit. Otherwise, they might pick it up. Oh, sorry, I should have clarified. I have to watch these screens. I can steer from the navcom, but I can't actually see outside to see if someone's in my way. What? Can't you get Ivanovich to steer? I don't know, ask him. Ivanovich, can you steer this thing? No, he's too big. That's what she said. Billy Bob shouted over the PA. Ayo! Fine. Stay in engineering. They stepped forward on the bridge and looked out the viewports. What do you need to know? Is there anything directly in front of us that we'll hit? No? There's buildings. Holy shit, buildings! We'll never escape. There was a pause as he read the screens around him. If you're glaring at me, I can't see it. Anyway, just sit down somewhere and don't crush anything. Finally, he activated the engines and disengaged the locks. The Atlas began to rise up out of the dock, as he angled it up at a slow pace. The buildings are getting closer. Port or starboard? Port! He shifted the ship a little and angled it up further, keeping it slow. Nothing but sky. He started to pick up the speed. Clouds! The sky is getting darker. He checked the readings on his navcomp. Atlas 221, this is Central. You're not following the proper course. You need to angle down and reduce speed. That's not what your wife said last night. Excuse me? All she kept shouting was harder, harder! How dare you! Eat shit, Central. I'm the fucking pilot. I don't need your stupid computers to tell me what I'm doing. But hey, let your wife know I had a great time last night with her and your sister. Who is this? I'll report you. I'll have you brought up on charges. Oh, I'm shaking in my boots. Like the cops are gonna give a shit about me screwing around with your family. It's legal, buddy. Well, maybe not what your mother did. That was some nasty shit. I'll kill you. I'll hunt you down. You're dead. Dead! Billy Bob cut the feed with a smile. And now this flight won't be properly recorded and tracked, because he'll have to explain that call. Now, why don't we get this fucking hog a rolling? He punched it as Crunch started to make the call to the cruiser. To make it easier to find them, he began to broadcast a new designation. Rosie. Then, across the ship's PA, the music rang out. Want to tell you a story about a woman I know. When it comes to loving, she steals the show. She ain't exactly pretty, ain't exactly small. 42, 39, 56, you could say she's got it all. Billy Bob was banging his head as he flew, and then as the chorus came on, he yelled out with a tune, "Howl out of Rosie!" And so ends another chapter in the adventures of Billy Bob, Space Trucker.